to order. And first up under public hearings is the board's consideration to approve purchase of the Sebastian Preserve site under the county Environmental Land Acquisition Program found on pages 420 through 445.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, I'm Roland DeBlois, Chief of County Environmental Planning. This is a proposed purchase under the county's Environmental Lands Acquisition Program. Subject property is located within the city of Sebastian, in the heart of the Highlands area, off of Angler Drive to the south. The property is about just over 162 acres. It's east of Collier Creek development. A couple of feet, the property is some very significant environmental features which made it qualify under the environmental land component of the program. Particularly, there's an eagle's nest that's known on the property. Other things to consider is that it's adjacent to and north of the Sebastian Stormwater Park, which is about 166 acres. Another thing we'll be talking about is the Fleming Street Extension project, which is being contemplated in early design stages as a potential east-west route that would, as currently planned, would go through the north quarter of the property, which was an issue that was discussed among the Land Acquisition Advisory Committee. This is kind of another view on the issue of the topic of the Fleming Street Extension. You see the yellow bold outline. That's the north quarter of the subject Sebastian Preserve property, and you see the corridor there of the potential future right-of-way of Fleming Street Extension. Again, it's about just under 163 acres overall. Of that, about 30.7 acres wetlands, about 132 upland. This is probably one of the more environmental properties that we've looked at under our program. It contains a nest of a bald eagle. The southern portions are scrub jay habitat, has gopher tortoises, ospreys, sandhill cranes have been seen on the property, so it clearly meets the environmental values that under the program that we are looking for. The other thing I want to point out is it's actually within a corridor of green space, a protected green space. To the south, as already indicated, is the 166-acre stormwater park, and then even south of that, contiguous, is the county's own Sebastian Scrub property. So this would add to that corridor of green space. As far as the potential use of the property from an appraisal standpoint, if it wasn't acquired for protection, it's in the city of Sebastian's RS10 zoning district for single-family development, which is about 5 units per acre, 10,000 square foot lots. The county did obtain 2 appraisals, as is its procedure, 2 independent appraisals, and among those were considered for the negotiated purchase price, which is $13.7 million is the proposed purchase price at about $84,000 per acre overall. That's about 91% of the approved appraised value, or the higher of the 2 appraisals we obtained, which was $15 million. These appraisals that the county obtained were conducted in October 2006, so they're still considered up to date. And we anticipate, though we don't currently have a grant award, we anticipate, given the site characteristics, that this is expected to qualify for 50% cost share funding through the Florida Communities Trust Program, which will result in about a net expenditure of county bond funds, approximately $6.9 million after the anticipated reimbursement through the state. This did go through the county's Land Acquisition Advisory Committee. There was unanimous support for the purchase, 17-0. There was a discussion, as I alluded to earlier, about the Fleming Street Extension. The committee was not supportive of the conflicts between the conservation of this property and the extension of Fleming Street through the property. They did not condition their recommendation of the purchase, however, on whether or not the Fleming Street goes through. They just wanted to make that recommendation. And on that point, let me just say that as we did with another project we purchased with environmental funds, what we call the Anson Tract. It also had a component of it that was needed for the County Road 512 road widening, and the way we handled it was any portion that would be used for the right-of-way was acquired with funds other than environmental and bond funds, which is something that would have to occur since we cannot use environmental and bond funds for right-of-way purchase. So there's an opportunity for that arrangement as depending on how it proceeds. Our staff's recommendation is to approve the purchase option agreement, also to authorize staff to proceed with the due diligence process of surveys and assessments and to move towards closing. And that's my presentation. Thank you.
Any questions of staff?
I have one.
Yes, Ms. Bowden?
Yes, you talked about the shared funding that we have always had with our projects before. Clarify exactly how much shared funding you're anticipating.
We would expect we could apply for 50% funding. Florida Communities Trust in the past has had a cap on local government per cycle of 6.6 million. That's right about near the 50% in this case. Depending on the circumstance, this is in the city, so it might be construed as kind of a joint government type acquisition. So I'm pretty confident that we can look at getting the 50%.
Pretty confident, being 90% confident, 100%, 95? You're an expert.
90, I can't say
99?
100%. I can say that the state's looking at actually making more money available per cycle just because of the escalation in land values over the years, so the state is real cognizant of that. And given the environmental characteristics and you know, the county staff's past experience with these applications, we feel, given the I'd say 90%.
Okay, the other part two of that question is that this is in the city of Sebastian, and I know that previously the city of Vero Beach and Indian River Shores has contributed to purchases of property. Were they asked or
This came up, yes, that's a good question, and this did come up as a point of discussion at the Land Acquisition Committee. Councilwoman Andrea Coy is on the committee, and I think, without speaking for the council, maybe they have representatives here, but I think they're generally supportive of the purchase as far as putting money towards the actual purchase price. There was no commitment on that. They felt that the taxpayers of Sebastian contribute to the bond fund, and that should be accounted for. But we did, however, and Ms. Coy did agree to approach the council on the aspect of management and management cost contribution.
I think that would be appropriate since we have done that before. I know Indian River Shores and Vero Beach also contribute to the management fund, and that was part of the condition of the sale and the matching funds when they sold the islands. And I think that it would be appropriate for Sebastian at least to contribute to the management, if not to the funding.
Anything else? Okay. This is a public hearing, and we'll open the public hearing, and we'll start on this side today and go that way. Anybody over here like to be heard on this? Yes, sir. Come to the podium, please, and give us your name and address.
Pays to move seats, I guess. My name is Graham Cox. I live at 1213 George Street in Sebastian. I'm a very close neighbor of the property under consideration here. I work for the National Audubon Society in another state, in New York, and I happen to be down here in my house down here when I saw this. I am delighted that this proposal is on here. I support it wholeheartedly. I'm in the land conservation business in New York, where we spend a lot more money because land somehow has got to be very expensive up there.
Doesn't sound like a New York City accent.
I assure you it is.
Alabama. That's not a New York accent.
I've asked many a time, where did you live? And I said, I lived in Rochester for a long time. That explains the accent. But it goes back to Yorkshire, where there are no trees.
Excellent.
I spend my time in the Adirondack Park working on sustainable forestry issues and open space conservation. So when I come down here and see you with this proposal, I'm absolutely delighted. I have one word of caution in doing all of these things. The issues we face in the Adirondack Park, 6 million acres, 50-50 public-private ownership split. On the public lands, Governor Pataki has just made a huge effort to buy an additional 1 million acres of land to add to the public lands system in the state. But the 1 million acres represents, in addition to the 4 million we already have, an incredible stewardship issue. And so we spend a whole time arguing about accessibility of motorized vehicles, damage from hikers, damage from mountain bikes, damage from all forms of uses, and how do we plan for it and how do we pay for it. So my words of caution are always, I love to see somebody acquiring, or at least the public entities acquiring property like this, but make sure that there's money there for the stewardship, because otherwise it'll be major disappointment to the neighborhood. They'll complain about all the uses, and the wildlife will suffer. I spent last evening watching 4 limpkin. I'd never seen them before in the canal right behind the house. The area is just loaded with wildlife. It's just amazed me how much there is in such a suburban built-up area. So this is a valuable contribution to protecting wildlife and nature in that area. I'm all in favor. We also have a saying in New York, after listening to the discussion about growth limits and what capacity, when it comes to development versus not development, the saying is, cows don't ride school buses. And in the rural part of the state where I spend most of my time, that's the argument I hear all the time. It's a lot cheaper to keep land open in the long run, provided you're prepared to do the stewardship part of it, than it is to say, yeah, let's put another 400 or 500 units in there. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think New York's getting a handle on it because their population's just,
Country's tipping.
Bob Johnson, Corwin Subdivision. This is a follow-on to the comment that Commissioner Bowden made. I'd like to see then, in lieu of her comments, that the preserve be renamed the Indian River County Preserve. And this, because it's a bond issue by the whole county, it would make everybody in the county feel like they had a share of the participation in the effort. And I think that this is a great opportunity for the county, and I'd like to see it move forward. Thank you.
thank you, Mr. Johnson. Anyone else on this side like to be heard? In the center, anybody like to be heard? Dale?
Thank you. Dale Simchek, 766 South Easy Street, Sebastian. And what a wonderful day. I finally get to bat for the Sebastian Preserve. I have worked with others very hard to keep this parcel from being developed, and now the county is taking over the process. This is a lovely 162-acre parcel just north of the 166-acre stormwater park, which will create a continuous green space and corridor. It's home to 22 wetlands, and according to your statistics, 30.7 acres of wetlands. Eagles who returned to the site even after the hurricane took their tree down. They even found that this was such a special place, they returned. Several osprey nests, great horned owls, indigo snakes, scrub jays, just mentioning gopher tortoise. These are the protected species. It is saturated with wildlife. Several groups visit this already, like the Pelican Island Audubon. The Florida Native Plant Society has 3 pages of species on it. The St. Lucie Audubon has scheduled its March 3rd field trip to this site. And again, all receiving great enjoyment from this parcel, from afar, from outside the boundaries. It is privately owned. It is a high threat to be developed and into a home site of 301 homes on 118 acres was the original site plan. And I know because I've been following this. There's always a hard question of buildable acreage, and it's always a difficult question. Depending on your time frame and your finances, everything is buildable. In this case, realistically, all he could not build was 350 feet around the eagle's nest and 400 feet around the sandhill crane nest. So it's all buildable. Through mitigation and paying into the funds that go to Tallahassee or Brevard, he could have built all except for those minor spots. It is truly a shame there's not more protection. Now, some may argue against this project, bringing up things like the past price a few years ago, which satisfied some taxes, back due taxes, or there's also a myth that they sold it to themselves at a tax less than fair market value and took a tax break. But that's a 3-year-old argument, and it's something that we're not going to argue. The other argument would be the loss of taxes to the county and city. My councilman, Sal Neglia, gave me a list, but he wanted to say that Sebastian will lose taxes by it not being developed, but we are happy to see this go forward. And then many things that I was going to say. And I know with an environmentally sensitive county and board that you would see that that would be a silly argument in this particular case. Development in the right place, the right way, this is not the right place. I could even argue the good side of the argument that $84,000 an acre on buildable property in Sebastian is nowhere to be found. There's a discussion about the with or without the shared funding. With or without the shared funding, this meets the criteria of the bond money that exists, and I hope that we get shared funding. There's also discussion of stewardship. I will tell you that this developer has not watched this property for years and has not managed it. We, the neighbors in the audience, have watched it, and I will tell you, you will have a lot of unappointed stewards in the audience that fondly watch this. But I do know that the stormwater park is due to be turned over to City of Sebastian a year from now, and I cannot speak for the city, but I'm sure we will find stewardship for and management for this property. And there's talk about the Fleming Street extension. That's a different argument for a different day. I will tell you that the City of Sebastian does not have the Fleming Street extension on their comp plan. They have not put it on their wish list and brought it to a 5-year plan and budgeted for it. It is on the county MPO plan for 2020-2030. If you wanted to make a more east to west route for the city with your MPO plan, you have plenty of time to find alternatives, and there's always alternatives. So with this aside, and just through the pure value of this land, through this purchase, you will add a truly special place to the county. I don't care what you call it, and I'm sure people who love it don't care what you call it if that's contingent on the sale. You're creating future possibilities for learning centers for children. I truly believe that that would make a beautiful learning center for the county. Protecting our environment and future water supply. So please consider hard. This is a wonderful purchase, and I think we should stick to, you have a seller, you have a buyer. What a great purchase. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there if you would, please, no applauding or anything else. There may be opposition to this too, and we all need to be polite. This is a business meeting, so I'd appreciate that. Thank you. Is there anyone else in the center that would like to be heard? Yes, ma'am. Peter, you want to come to that one?
My name is Robin Myers. I live at 739 South Easy Street. I'm a relatively new resident to Indian River County. I've only been here 2 years. My property backs up to the property that we're talking about. Part of the reason that my family purchased it is part of the property that we own. We agreed to be stewards of 165 feet that backs up into this. I will tell you that in addition to the animals that you've heard about, we've also, my neighbors and I, seen Florida panthers, bobcats, and it would be a wonderful thing for this county to consider. And I would tell you that I know the neighbors on either side of me would definitely consider being stewards to this property, and that it would be a wonderful opportunity for the youth of this county. And I would support whatever you decide to name it.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Peter Robinson with Laurel Homes, and we're the developer next door to this property, which has Laurel Reserve. And I can tell you this, that property is, you know, I've watched a lot of property in this county over the years, and that property has amazed me, the amount of wildlife that's on it. And it is a unique piece of property. And if you don't buy it, you're missing a real opportunity, because I've been amazed as we've developed out there and watched what's gone on, all the animals that are using that property all the time with people all around it. And as the other man said, the important part is to be a good steward, because it's a good piece of property. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the center want to be heard? Yes, sir. Mr. Wolf?
Eugene Wolf, 757 Wimbrow Drive, Sebastian. I have great concerns that the purchase of this property will jeopardize the entire land acquisition program in Indian River County. I believe that this property was purchased during the land rush, the real estate boom that this county's never seen in 2005. It was purchased for just under $1.3 million. In fact, the seller who sold this property lost money on the transaction. We've heard in the previous discussions earlier this morning, developer after developer talking about the current real estate market and how developments are being stopped in their tracks. So I've got to question why we would be using nearly 30% of the $50 million funds we have to purchase a property and enrich a investor by over 1,000%. I understand the voters. We voted the proposition in for the land acquisition, and we felt that there needed extraordinary measures to preserve areas of our county. There's no question about that. But I believe that if you ask most people who've supported the program, they thought that these funds would go to areas like the Indian River Lagoon, St. Sebastian River, historic Indian Middens, these types of areas. And it wouldn't go, these funds wouldn't be spent to enrich property owners in a Powerball type fashion. I understand this meeting here today is a culmination of a year-and-a-half effort by basically a lobbying effort by the property owners adjacent to this property. It's very understandable. I think if I lived adjacent to the property, I'd be here on their side as well. You have to also understand it's not all altruistic principles that are involved. There are financial gains. There's financial gains for, as the gentleman from Florida, Future Florida, showed in the slideshow earlier this morning. He mentioned property values. So there's no question that the residents adjacent to this will enjoy stability of property values. There's no question in my mind, the gentleman from the Laurel Preserve, who's got quite a few lots adjacent to this property, and earlier he said he wished he was selling homes. He's got vacant lots adjacent to that. There will be financial rewards for him as well. I'm a big person. That's the real world. That's just the way it is. But I want to bring it out. I want to bring out that transparency, and I want to bring out the facts that the person, it appears to me that we've gotten to almost into a poker game where the pot is the $50 million we've got, and that the developer is calling a bluff. To try to put things into perspective, the earlier speaker mentioned that this was in great danger of being developed. I think, to try to put it into perspective, you're probably aware that the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists out of University of Chicago has this doomsday clock. And the clock kind of shows how close we are to nuclear Armageddon. At the moment, the clock is set at 5 minutes to midnight, midnight being Armageddon. If we were to take a similar analogy and say, what is the risk of this property being environmentally sensitive, getting the permits, the current market and demand for housing? What is the development clock for this property looked like. And I dare say you could probably set it at 12:27 in the afternoon. The recent school board purchase of property has certainly shattered the confidence of many of the taxpayers in Indian River County as to the fiscal responsibility that our government boards are using our taxpayer money. I'm sure each one of you on the board here probably said to themselves, if I was in that similar position with that decision, I would have shown more due diligence. Well, we're in a similar position here, where we are spending a huge chunk, almost 30% of this $50 million, and I truly believe that if we don't show some due diligence with the taxpayers, that this entire program will become in jeopardy. You know, if we were buying this property for $2 million, I wouldn't be here. But I really think the fact that we're going to enrich these people by $12.5 million in less than 2 years is a serious consideration, and I would like you to take that under consideration. Thank you.
Thank you,
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
there's
Chairman,
some misinformation I want to clarify. There was a reference to the seller having bought this for $1.1 million. That's wrong. That's incorrect. This property was bought under the, it was considered an appraisal. It was bought for $4.6 million under 2 contracts, and it was done under a 2003 contract. The closing occurred in 2005, but it was actually a $4.6 million purchase under 2003 contract prices. So I just wanted to clarify the information. It was in the newspaper. It was incorrect. So that's the clarification on that point, which translates to about $35,000 per upland acre under 2003 prices. Thank you.
Mr. Wolf?
Mr. Chairman, I just got that information off the Indian River Tax Appraiser's website. It shows Lincoln Land Development, a purchase of $1.14 million.
Yeah,
Thank
and that's incorrect.
Well, before we get into the argument, I'll just, you know, and you've both made your point, but my position is, quite frankly, I don't care if they bought it for 50 cents last year. It's irrelevant to the question. The question is what's the value of the property? And when you want to buy something, you buy it based on a value and whether you want it or not. I could go out and pan for 10 ounces of gold. I got it for nothing. It was worth $800 an ounce. So, you know, I think that the price is, you know, whatever somebody paid for something is obviously, I just don't think that it comes in the equation. So,
and I agree. I just wanted to clarify that for the record. The property appraisers, it was done, like I had said, it was actually done under 2 contracts. I believe the error was property appraisers picked up on one of those contracts with reference to one of the properties. This is actually currently 3 different tax parcels. It's not just one.
right.
And again, Mr. Du Bois, the appraisal is 4 months old?
It was completed in October, and the contract was signed soon thereafter.
3 months.
So we feel these appraisals are up to date and they are reflective of the current market value.
We're seeing difference of opinion, whether it's 2 months, 3 months, or 4 months. How long does it take to get an appraisal up and running and to us? How long will it take to get those numbers from the time of request?
The
in
date
your
of
experience?
evaluation was October 19th, and we do not feel that there's any reason to do an update at this time.
No, I just wanted to know the time frame from when you request an appraisal to when it's actually delivered, maybe.
It's typically 30 to 45 days.
Very good.
Okay.
Anything else, Mr. Fletcher?
Well, and with those numbers, with the 4.6 that you're stating is reflected on the record?
It's included in the appraisals. It's researched and documented.
And I understand that you have a very good track record in the past in getting grant and funding, and I appreciate and respect that. What would be the number if you were to get a matching grant?
We anticipate it would, the net expenditure of the bond funds would be about just under $7 million. It would be 6.9 approximately out of the 50. So the percentage is less than the 30%, whatever that translates to.
So in essence, this would possibly cost us $400,000 above the 4.6 million.
Yeah, I'm just saying that we anticipate that the final bond expenditure for this purchase will be in the realm of 6.9 million. That's assuming the state reimbursement.
Small price to pay. Thank you.
Anyone else in the center? Mr. Tripson?
Jens Tripson, 2525 14th Street, Vero Beach. I'm speaking on behalf of Pelican Island Audubon Society this morning, and I think that we'd be a little foolish to pass up a piece of property like this. We're, as I said a couple of weeks or last week, we've seen the end of cheap land, and I think Peter Robinson made the statement that that raw land has not gone down in price, that the land like WCI has gone down in price. So if we don't buy this now, it's going to either cost us more or it's going to be houses. And it might not be next year, but it'll be the year after or the year after. And if we take into account the wildlife that's there and the value to our community, we're getting a deal. And Roland's had a very good track record of getting Florida Community Trust funds. So I'd really urge you to go through with this purchase. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the center? Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Robert Johnson, Sebastian. I live adjacent to the property also. I just wanted to mention that the permits were being submitted with St. Johns River Water Management District and the Army Corps of Engineers. The property was already surveyed. The lots were being laid out, and the Lincoln Land Development had spent some money on getting surveying done. So it was very close to being developed. But through the efforts of the locals, we've pretty much stopped. Well, the guy had retracted. So he was very much interested in developing the property. So it was very close to happening where we would have lost it. And just wanted to reflect on that comment that he made about how close it had been to being developed, because it was very close. And luckily, we've stopped it for now. And we'd hope to see you buy it so we could preserve all that wildlife that's out there.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else in the center like to be heard? If not, we'll move over to the left. Anyone on the left like to be heard?
Good afternoon. Joseph Paladin. I live at 6450 Tropical Way, and I'm a developer here in town. I don't have a development against this property. I still think it's very likely that it'll be developed very soon. It's very valuable property. And I would say that this is a good deal for the bond money to be spent on, and I would support this purchase. And having said that, I'd like to ask a question, if I may.
Certainly.
Okay.
I was just surprised. That's something new.
Permission?
You see, I be polite and I get shot down. Anyway, I'd like to know what's going to happen to the development rights on this property.
This is a full fee simple purchase. The county will own the property in whole. Even with the state cost share grant, the county would still be the 100% title holder of the property. So that includes all the rights that go with it, the whole bundle of rights we're buying for the purchase of the property.
Yeah, so in essence, the development rights would be extinguished.
I would ask a consideration, perhaps, if the development rights are going to be extinguished, I would ask that maybe we name a third-party beneficiary like the Audubon, and let them hold the rights to see if maybe somewhere in the future, maybe a piece of property and we don't have any bond money to buy it, maybe it's an essential piece that we need, and I feel comfortable with the Audubon being the third-party beneficiary and giving value and letting the Audubon carry that. There'd be less apt of these extinguished rights ever being brought back. I'd just like to see the Audubon brought into this as a third-party beneficiary and leave that door open in case we need more money to buy a real valuable piece of property in the future.
Does
I
the
think
bond
that's-
language allow that?
I don't know, but I also think that's a question for the future. I don't think we can rearrange everything where we're at now, and that may be something that if the commission wants to explore at some future date, but we're getting in the middle of changing the whole program here.
All right, well, I support the purchase. I just had that question. Thank you.
Thank you.
And let me just tell you, this is in the city of Sebastian, so really it's development rights that the city controls.
But we own.
And we extinguish.
Yeah, but the city would control the development rights and
Right.
whether or not they could be transferred.
Right. Mr. Cox, Dr. Cox.
Commissioners, David Cox, Periwinkle Drive. I have two things I would like to say. One is I do hope that you support staff recommendation to add this to the list of the county's fully owned environmental lands. This is just a lovely piece of savanna lying right in the lee of the Atlantic coastal ridge, and it's a rare opportunity to protect this sort of land for the future generations. And the second thing I want to note is that this has been really a grassroots, bottom-up effort, and I want to really call your attention to that fact, and that Dale and her neighbors were the people who first noticed and expressed great concern about this. And I think this is something really important for us to acknowledge, is that people who live in this community are really becoming activists in protecting the quality of life they have here. And I want you to listen to what they're saying. We all need to listen to it. I think it's terrifically important that we continue to foster this sort of civic environmentalism and civic care about our treasures. And I think they've done a terrific job, just a terrific job. And I certainly hope that you support them in their efforts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor.
Anyone else on the left side would like to be heard? Yes, sir.
Joe Scazzari, 1401 Thornhill Lane, Sebastian, Florida. I'm here on behalf of my wife. She's working today. She couldn't make it. Julie feels that the commission should acquire the property as well. She thinks it'd be great for to protect that whole area. Now, I'm going off of notes that she just jotted down, so forgive me. She's thinking that maybe, in the future, that area can be used as a transporting station for tortoise and other maybe animals that they have to move from one place that is being developed. So to keep that in mind, and she also just said she would like to see some sort of maybe a winding bicycle path to go through there, or some kind of a little thing like that. But, like I said, if she was here, she'd say it. But we're for it. Julie's for it as well.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to be heard across the entire audience? Anyone at all? If not, we'll close.
got one more,
Oh, I'm sorry, ma'am, I
Have
didn't
one
see
here.
you. Thank you, Wesley.
Hi, Commissioners. I'm Kathy Thomas. My address is 2109 Southeast 2nd Avenue. I've sit here and listened to this. I'm for it. Think it's a great idea. I have not been up the Sebastian River in years. I go back to when you could take the beach buggies and go along the beach and all of that. Can't do that anymore. So preserving this piece of property is important to future Vero Beach. One thing that's in my mind is I am assuming, from what I'm hearing, that this will be public property. Bike trails, that kind of thing, schools to go, maybe an environmental center. I am more for spending, even if we have to spend the total amount of money, the 13 point whatever, than giving Mr. Sexton $12 million to keep his ranch in force and the county never being able to use it as public property. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to be heard?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Damian Gilliams, 1623 US 1, Sebastian. I think it's a plus to have this in our community. I'm a little disappointed that nobody from the city of Sebastian staff had come down to express their feelings on the issue, especially the stewardship. But I couldn't help myself. I felt that this was a perfect opportunity to highlight an area that I think most people care about in this community. It's okay to take care of the wildlife and preserve them, but there are a lot of unfortunate people in this community, like our homeless, and maybe we should have some matching funds for them every time we put property aside, $13 million, that we can look to that avenue as well, because they need help. Thank you.
The only, just a comment, because I saw some letters also that mentioned that. I want to make it clear for everyone that's not aware, but this is a bond referendum that was voted for, and the money's to be used specifically for this area, either agriculture, conservation, or historical lands. The money's not allowed to be used for anything else. And the other thing, Damien, I just mentioned that, you know, right now the county gives away, through the SHIP program and other resources in this county, over $1 million a year to help with various projects and help people get started and so on and so forth. So it's not like we're neglecting some area of the community for this area. And that's simply to make this accurate in what's being said. Anyone else like to be heard? If not, we'll close the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to approve this land acquisition with the reservation of the naming of the property.
I'm not what reservation?
As far as
I heard some concern about the naming of the property, and most certainly we can look at that at a later date. The most important thing today is to ensure that the wildlife has an area to thrive, and that was the purpose in the meeting today, and it wasn't the naming of the property, and I heard some ambiguity about what it should be
Okay.
called.
Okay.
I have some ideas.
Do we have a second?
But we could have a workshop on the naming, and I'd like to include the students and the
second the motion.
citizens.
I'll second the motion. Under discussion, anyone have any comments to make? I'd just like to comment that on this property, 76% of the people voted for this bond. They voted with it with various things being used as examples. And I, for one, won't sit up here and say that they don't know what they're voting for. And also, we've probably got 19 of some of the brightest people in Indian River County serving on the Land Acquisition Committee. And they really do their homework. They tour the properties. We've got excellent staff when it comes to this with Roland. And so unless, you know, when these things come up, I feel somewhat compelled to support recommendation from staff, the voters, and the Land Acquisition Committee. And so that being said, I'm, you know, obviously I second the motion. I'm in favor of this.
I'm in favor of it too, Mr. Chairman, but we always have to be fiscally responsible, and what's fair for one side should be fair for the other. And so I do always ask about the matching funds and about the stewardship cost of managing this land, and that, you know, if at all possible, the communities that this land is in should be asked. And I don't think they were asked, and so that's just my point on that.
No, I fully agree.
Mr. Chairman, as liaison to the Land Acquisition Committee, this issue was brought up during the meeting. And it was pointed out that the citizens in Sebastian have been paying tax money for years for a lot of projects that were purchased outside of Sebastian. And Roland, is this correct? Is this the first property within the city limits, or is there another one?
Actually, the North Sebastian Conservation Area is largely in the city.
Okay.
So-
But anyway, the point is, they've been paying just like everybody else has been paying. You know, you can make the argument, hey, I don't live off Oslo Road, so why did I have to pay for the Oslo River conservation area?
I don't think that's my point at all. My point was that we have always, if it was in a city, contributed. That's just, I'm trying to be fair and balanced.
Okay. Well, that was brought up at the meeting, so.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir, Mr. Davis.
Yeah, I'd like to kind of push it in the direction of allowing, giving the city of Sebastian the opportunity to, if it allows it in our, with our bond language, they're going to be taking care of the stormwater park to the south of this. They've got the 10 acres on the south side of Engler of this. Just logistically speaking, as well as being more in tune to the residents that are directly around this piece of property. If it's allowed in our bond language, and perhaps some guidance through the Environmental Lands Advisory Committee, the committee, not the land acquisition part of it, but the committee of how it's maintained and stewarded. It might behoove us to kind of start moving in that direction now with this piece of property and ask them if they'd like to take care of it.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable to, you know, to work with them to maintain the property. And, you know, it does benefit Sebastian residents, but there's other pieces out here also. So
Absolutely.
I think that's something well worth exploring.
And they just hired an environmental position. I met the lady, and she's very qualified, and they've got the expertise and can joint venture with the Division of Forestry for prescribed burnings. And
it'll be an enjoyable experience.
Sure it would. Sure it would. And if they'd like, I mean, I'm not trying to push this off on them, but I think they probably would like to have that opportunity and some of the autonomy.
Any further discussion? If not, we'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries 5-0.
Roland, how far out before you will know if we do get matching funds? Do you know pretty quickly, or?
Typically, their next cycle will be in the spring, so we really won't know till.
So we won't have that
like
refund back
September.
to purchase new land until a year or so?
It'll probably be September, so we know for sure.
And Roland, help me with this too. If they don't lift the $6 million cap, we've got 2 years to be able to apply for it. And then so I guess really backing the dollars of the bond into the time frame of reimbursement if they don't lift the $6 million cap from the Florida Communities Trust, we're looking at 8 years of having to spread this out over 8 years to get the maximum amount of dollars from the state if they don't lift that cap, 6 into 48, or 6 times 8 being 48.
Yeah, I understand your point. I do know, I think one of the things Ken Grudens of the Indian River Land Trust was alluding to is that they're talking about setting up a new third phase of this funding through the state, and I think they're talking about, again, to accommodate for the rise in prices is to increase the amount available. So I'm hopeful that there'll be some more opportunity.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.